Ex-cons of Reddit, what's the most terrifying thing you saw inside of prison? Content warning. Some of the stories are difficult to listen to and may be triggering for some individuals. Skip this video if you are sensitive to this type of content. My cellmate was truly crazy and was tortured by hallucinations. One day he managed to gouge one of his eyes out with a fork at lunch in front of everyone, then puncture the other eye with something before the screws could get to him. He was screaming like a banshee when he ripped the first one out and threw it on the floor, and everyone just stared in shock, including the screws. At first it looked like a skid or something. After the one was out, he went really quiet and pulled something from his waist and started rapidly stabbing the other eye with it. I heard it pop. By that time a couple of screws were already just about on him and they took him down. Never saw him again after that, but I heard he was completely blinded. So quite a few of us never finished lunch, and some got some counseling because it was so violent and shocking. I still remember a screw picking the eye up with a clear plastic bag while we were all being filed out. Not me, but I spoke to a former inmate after his release who had developed severe PTSD from some of the things he witnessed while incarcerated. One of the stories was that he was playing cards with some guys and one of them was smoking a cigarette. Another inmate who was not playing with them approached the table and asked the guy smoking if he could get shorts on the cigarette. Shorts means, before you finish smoking, you gave the cigarette to someone else so they got the last few puffs of the cigarette before putting it out. The smoker agreed, the inmate wandered off and they went back to playing cards. Well, the guy playing cards must have forgot and finished the cigarette. A little while later the other inmate came back to the table asking for the short, and the guy at the table told him that he had forgotten about it and finished the cigarette. Guy wanders off again and they go back to playing cards. Shortly afterwards, the inmate who wanted shorts comes back to the table, comes up behind the player, pulls his head back and started shanking him in the eye and throat with a pen/pencil. Dude died over forgetting to give someone a damn cigarette butt. A dude got 2 full kettles of boiling water poured on his head. And a convicted murderer explaining how he killed, dismembered with an angle grinder then disposed of the body. The violence was nothing compared to the people. The guy who taught me Scrabble beat his wife to death with a frying pan when she discovered his gambling debts. The guy who taught me poker tied up his employer in his house, and when the boss refused to give him the combo to his safe, the guy just burned the house down with his boss tied inside. I worked out with a guy who was caught with 2 arms and 1 leg in his trunk. He was in an Asian gang, had just performed a hit and was bringing the evidence back to his people for proof when he was pulled over. His co-defendant was snitching, so he spent literally all of his time working out to kill the guy the second he got the chance. Before I got shipped to prison, yay, these were all county jail, he finally got his shot and essentially ripped the guy's face off in the middle of a hallway in front of guards. It was a huge mess on the cops' part, to the point where it was rumored it was the gang that paid to make sure the snitch died. You live with these people. Play cards, gamble, watch sports. If you're locked in your cell for a big game, you listen on your radios together and talk shit through the hatches in your doors. On Wednesdays your chicken quarter is gonna go towards a huge homemade meal for whoever wanted to chip in, and it's gonna be made by the 22-year-old crip who's been charged with 9 separate murders and is seemingly the nicest person you'll ever meet. It's freaking wild, nothing makes sense and everything's dangerous. You're in this together, but at the same time everyone has all sorts of rage just ready to blow. I had an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, as well as a separate case of unlawful possession of a firearm. So I had the pleasure of going to max units. Interestingly enough, the threat of constant danger actually helped things stay calm the vast majority of the time. Everyone's a killer, no one wants to be killed type vibes. I got stabbed with a Dixon pencil, but that was from Richard Busby, Mr. Tie my boss up and burn him alive. It was over a gambling debt he owed me. He's old and weak, I ultimately took twice what he owed me, and we were back at the table playing poker together that same day. Google his name if you'd like, I believe he just had an appeal denied or something. Either you become one of them, or you live underneath them. And once you're one of them, they're surprisingly and frighteningly good-natured and decent to kill a few years' time with. Story 1. Was playing chess and heard HNNNNNN thok. Turned around and a black dude looked about 60 had a seizure while he was standing up and fell onto the metal seat at our table. Blood was absolutely gushing out of this dude's head. I have a friend W epilepsy, so knew to put him in recovery position and keep away from his mouth. The CO showed up and shackled/cuffed him while he was still seizing. As he convulsed, the cuffs cut into his wrists and ankles deeply. Started yelling at them, "What the fuck are y'all doing? Get a gurney and call 911. They told us to lock down on our bunks and STFU or we're going to seg." No one shut up. Can't take us all. They instead ushered the entire pod into our outdoor rec area, 30 by 15 enclosed room with a 4 inches slit 10 feet up for fresh air, and kept us all out there. Watched this dude seize for another 15 minutes, blood in a pool all around him from his head, wrists, and ankles being mangled. They eventually took him out and I never saw him again. Almost certain he died. We stayed locked in the yard for 4 hours and were threatened to not discuss it. Story 2. In another unit in the same month, a guard suplexed a dude who had to weigh 110 pounds wet for talking back to him. The guy broke his neck and died. You can find the story of this online by searching WCDC body slam death. The guard was charged manslaughter, not sure if he was convicted. Story 3. Was playing Scrabble waiting on the phone to open up. A dude was on the phone with his wife and kids and started losing his shit all of a sudden. He started yelling in the most guttural, heartbreaking way, "No, no, no, no." The guards were like, "Hey, calm down now." While he was on the phone with them, someone did a drive-by on his house and shot his wife and killed one of his children. The guard snatched the phone from him and threw him on the ground, restrained him, and took him to segregation where there are no phones. Guy was weeping, saying he just heard his baby get killed on the phone. They just took him to seg. Never saw him again either. I was in a South American prison. There was a lot of drug addicts. They usually sold their food in order to buy more drugs, so they were always hungry. One day I was eating my lunch, rice, a leg of chicken and some beans. When I finished my meal, there were some chicken bones left in my plate, and a drug addict approached to me to ask if I could gift him the chicken bones. So I lent him my bones and he started eating them. It was heartbreaking. A guy got stomped to death my first day in. The two guys fighting were rival gang members. The guards didn't do anything until the guy getting stomped stopped breathing. Then they came in and took them both away. One in a bag and one in cuffs. Brixton, a wing. Coming back from canteen, this scary looking wild-eyed dude steps across and tells me to hand over my burn/tobacco. I laugh and say no and walk by, waiting for him to do something. Nothing happened. Few minutes later, same guy opened some poor lad's stomach with one slash and he was lying there trying to hold his intestines in. I saw the fear and panic on his face. The scary guy just casually walked away. No idea what happened to either of them. Alarms went off. Everyone back to their cells and locked up again. I don't know if this counts, but my dad was in prison with Richard Speck, who is, if you don't know, an American mass murderer who brutally murdered and assaulted 8 nurses. My dad told me during his time in prison, Speck bragged about what he did all the time, and said prison was a wonderful vacation for him and he would do it all again if he had the chance. He would even go as far as saying how much he loved to kill those women. So sickening. Speck also made porn in prison, which I'm sure is on the internet somewhere. Bill Curtis made a scandal by exposing a video taken from inside Joliet prison in which we see Speck shooting drugs and blowing other inmates to get some. He had also hormones smuggled inside to grow himself some visible breasts, ostensibly to peddle himself to other inmates. He also visibly bragged about the murders and shared he had no feelings about killing those nurses. He was having the time of his life inside bars. My criminal justice professor always used to tell us about the $1 Million Man in his prison he used to work at. The prison was an old school style with multiple floors and the open part of the middle like you see in the movies. To avoid jumpers, they put chain link fencing along the walkways. One day this guy managed to squeeze through the fencing on the 3rd floor and swan dive face first to the concrete floor below. When they came in, they all thought he was dead until he began making noises. The prisoner was then transferred to a hospital for a year and a half, getting around 12 different surgeries. Eventually he was released back to the prison, and on his 2nd month back he did it again but didn't survive this time. The running joke was that he was named the $1 Million Man because he had cost taxpayers millions from all his surgeries and time in the hospital. Our teacher also liked to add in every time he told the story that somehow his glasses survived both falls completely fine. I saw someone take a hot pot, fill it up with baby oil, add a pound of sugar, add some magic shave, bring it to a boil, then splash it in a person's face. It literally melted the guy's face off. This happened around 1999 and I still have the occasional nightmare about it. I was sitting in TV room in the feds. The inmate phones in this particular institution are situated in little phone booths. No idea why, but on the move, a guy ran up in the housing unit and stabbed the guy 15 or so times in the booth. 3 in the face. Dude couldn't go anywhere. Slumped immediately. Second, 2 guys in the kitchen made a bet that one of them wouldn't go through the commercial dishwasher. Guy took the bet and went through. Came out the other side as one human-sized blister, 100% of his skin was blistered full of juice. He was airlifted out in a bubble-wrapped suit to hospital. I was fresh in at the time and working in the kitchen when this happened. But I wasn't in the dish room. The blood-curdling screaming as the dishwasher cycled on still gives me goosebumps 10 years later. And I can't unsee what a human covered in blisters looks like. I don't know if he survived as they don't give updates to inmates. I do know the guy who bet him was charged with fresh street charges. And there are plenty more. CO here. Had a guy stick a full-size number 2 pencil in his leg, the long way, insert it into his thigh, and shoved it under the skin until you couldn't see it anymore. Took him to the hospital to have it removed. Days later, he did the same thing, in the same hole with a rubberized pencil. Rinse and repeat, hospital removes the pencil again. Couple days later, while on active suicide watch, he managed to jam part of a styrofoam cup, playing cards, and caulking from a cell window into his leg pocket. Took him to the OR, doctors pulled out another inch of wood pencil lead, and fragments of God knows what out of there. I don't even think he knew what all was in there. Not prison but courthouse holding cells. Was in for a drunken fight myself, as was pretty much all of the 8 guys I was sharing that cell with. All of us were worn out / hungover or shaking for a fix except this one guy who was acting happy because he was up first and in his words going to be the first to get a smoke, which he was happy about. Being locked up in those cells, it's not rare for people to chat a bit since we had all been in solitary police station holding cells before, usually what are you in for type small talk. Well, this happy guy didn't know what he had done but knew he couldn't remember the last couple of days, so assumed it was drunken behavior of some sort. He was the first to see his lawyer and came back white as a sheet, not talking and just staring at the wall until one of the guys got him to talk. Turned out he had got blind drunk with added Valium, found on him, got in a fight and lost, gone home and come back with a kitchen knife and a kettle full of sugar water, stabbed a random guy and thrown the kettle into the bar, scalding multiple people, plus the guy he stabbed was in hospital in critical condition and he was up on multiple counts of assault with intent to injure, serious bodily harm, possession of a deadly weapon, possession of a controlled substance and attempted murder. He was not going to be first out for a smoke and was looking at a long prison sentence. Went from cock of the walk to hollow in all of 20 minutes. I'd seen a lot of shit, but I've never seen someone get the look of having lost their entire life like that. That is wild. An old neighbor of mine took a bunch of Xanax bars and who knows what else and decided to drive. He came home, went to sleep. The next morning the cops were outside. Street cam saw him straight up run over and kill a woman. Didn't slow down. He had zero recollection. I was told the story from his older brother who he lived with. The brother was completely broken over it. In a similar thread, I remember a response about hearing inmates grind their shivs all night before a riot, knowing you'd be fighting for your life soon. When everyone has their shoes laced up, you know something is about to break off. Massive open wound, flesh gashes down to the bone made by herself on her forearms and top of the legs that she used to hide things in, like paintbrushes, coffee rations, pens, etc. I could literally see her bones. Not terrifying, exactly, but once a water main near the prison broke in the late afternoon, and the white shirt on duty, the senior administrative correctional officer, just kind of decided to believe that the problem would get fixed quickly enough that no emergency steps were needed. This was summertime in Florida, BTW. Within maybe 5 hours, the toilets were overflowing with feces, and people were literally crapping on newspapers on the ground like dogs. It was hot, flies were everywhere, and the only water we received before 10 a.m. the following morning was a single 4-ounce half cup. After the incident ended, a handful of inmates initiated the grievance process, which was the first step to build up to a lawsuit. Those inmates were individually brought before the head administrative white shirt, a colonel in DOC parlance, and told in no uncertain terms that if they proceeded with the legal process, they would be beaten to death, and the paperwork would reflect that they had died while attempting to kill a correctional officer. I was held without bail in county jail for 2 weeks. We get to watch TV during rec. We were watching the news one day, and this guy was arrested for killing a judge's brother by stabbing. He was a mean-looking skinhead with neck and face tats. Next day, he's now in my cell block looking extremely on edge. Turns out, the guy he killed assaulted a female member of his family. Although set to get a prison sentence, he killed for his family's honor. Reminds me of this guy I met in prison. Really great guy, nice, patient, funny. Didn't have any tats or scars, Looked like he was in his early 20s even though he was in his 30s. He was locked up when he was 16 because he killed his dad with a kitchen knife. His dad was a sitting judge who'd been molesting the guy in prison, sister. He'd been doing it for years and the guy finally had enough, so he knifed his dad 6 times. Court didn't care the judge was molesting his daughter, still gave the guy 30 years. Sucks because he was only 16 and tried as an adult. As much as inmates say they hate child molesters, they'll seek out the youngest or youngest looking guy. As always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, show your support. Leave your thoughts and opinions down below.